I think I watched it about 3 times now. I watched specific scenes more than once that I was interested in breaking down a little bit more than others. But I think like in total, I've seen every episode start to finish 3 times. And so
Nice.
I've had
You
some
did your
time to.
homework.
I did my homework, but I was also extremely reluctant to give an answer on how I felt about it right away because the first 2 episodes probably came around to what, like an hour and 30 minutes, an hour and 45. And I felt like there was so much packed into those 2 episodes. So I was super reluctant to jump forward and give an answer right away, especially because I'm coming at it from the I know Clone Wars and I know Rebels really, 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 really well. And I wanted to give it time to sink in before I fully formulated an opinion. But I feel ready to talk about it now. I know you said you only got to watch it once, but
I watched
I
it
don't.
one kind of twice because I did my reaction video editing, so I paid closer attention than I
Yeah.
usually do when I'm editing those videos. Um, so, and then I read up on some stuff too. So I'm not as prepared as I'd like to be because I would have liked to watch it twice, but I've still seen it once, so I have plenty of information to go off of. And by the way, this is a nice like comparison here because you're the Star Wars dork and I'm just like the regular guy
I don't
approaching it
think
with
you're
like a
the regular guy.
well, I'm more regular than your average person. I'd say, or you're the average watcher of the show. Probably everyone, all of our viewers probably know more than I do. So I might come off as a little ignorant because I haven't watched Rebels. But I think that's a good perspective to have because
I agree.
that's how a lot of people are going to be viewing the show, and actually, that's where a lot of the criticism's coming from on the show, which we can talk about later. Which some of it I agree with, some of it I disagree with. But I think it's a good balancing from the two of us is like you have a really detailed perspective and I'll have like the hey, what's the first impression from someone who's like I'm just watching this show dry. You know what I mean? And I
Sure.
don't have all the context. And I still have really good things to say about it. So I think I think it still will be a very valid breakdown from both of us. So guys, thanks for joining today. If you do enjoy these videos, want to watch the rest of them, which I may or may not be a part of because my baby's on the way, please click like, subscribe below, leave your comments. You guys have left a lot of comments already. It seems like people are really excited about the show, but thank you for joining us on this journey as we continue to break down all the latest and greatest Star Wars content coming out, and the most highly anticipated show. This show, I think, for since Obi-Wan, I think is this show Ahsoka, and there was really high hopes for it. So if you guys want to be here on that journey with us, click like, subscribe. Also check out our merch and all that fun stuff. Shoot us an email at anotherstarwarspodcast@gmail.com. Go to our socials at @star_wars_pod and check us out there too. So that's my blurb.
That's the blurb. All right, let's kick it off. Let's talk about Ahsoka parts 1 and 2. I believe the first part is called Master and Apprentice, and the second part is called Toil and Trouble. We are going to break each of these episodes down scene by scene, and we're going to discuss and give our overall thoughts, and then give the final verdict on what
Yeah,
we
we'll give a
thought.
final verdict. We used to do our thoughts at the beginning of the episode, and I feel like that was like too jumbled up. It wasn't organized
Sure.
enough. So that's why we do scene by scene now for everyone joining who maybe watched some of our old episodes before. But we started doing that with Mando and with Bad Batch, and we're going to continue that format for Ahsoka, unless you guys like the random chatting
Going all over the board.
tangent, yeah, the tangent way. But I think this is a little bit more organized, and we'll still give our tangent thoughts during the episode and at the end. So, yeah, if you're good to start, should we jump into the episode?
Yeah, Master and Apprentice. Let's talk about it. Let's do our breakdown.
All right. So,
Buckle
starting
up.
off, episode 1. All right. This is a very good opening, in my opinion. We start with a crawl, the Star Wars crawl in red lettering. I'll just read the crawl real quick. The evil galactic empire has fallen and a new republic has risen to take its place. However, sinister agents are already at work to undermine the fragile peace. A plot is underway to find the lost Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn and bring him out of exile. Once presumed dead, rumors are spreading of Thrawn's return, which would galvanize the Imperial remnants and start another war. Former Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano captured one of Thrawn's allies and learned of a secret map which is vital to the enemy's plan. Ahsoka now searches for the map as her prisoner, Morgan Elsbeth. Is transported to the New Republic for trial. So this deserves a tangent in and of itself, starting the show this way. I think it's a brilliant move. Amazing. Like, you can't get more Star Wars than this. I don't think. Like, obviously, this is like one of the most iconic things. I would have loved to see the yellow lettering and stuff. This was more like a la Clone Wars, you know?
Yeah, a little bit.
But I still think it's fine. It's very Filoni. And it gives people context. If you don't know who Ahsoka is, let's set it up. Let's give some character names, and that way we can kind of hit the ground running. What did you think of this?
Oh, I loved it. I think it brings Star Wars back to the Star Warsiness. I think it's a very George Lucas move. I really appreciate it because Dave Filoni has done that in his other projects as well. More so Clone Wars, I would say, but it's very him. And I think it's a good way to get people excited because to me, it felt more like a Star Wars movie opening than a TV show opening. And for that
Yes.
reason, it got me really, really excited. I was like, oh, like
Yeah.
back in the theater Star Wars vibe. So
Yeah, and also, so right after this, then you see the ship in space. I love
classic
that.
Star Wars.
That like zaps you into that world right away. And this is a testament to a lot of the things they did correctly in this episode. By the way, before we before we go any deeper, I just want to note, I forgot to say this at the beginning. Sorry, I'm a little rusty, but this episode was written and directed by Dave Filoni. Okay. Episode 2, which by the way, we'll treat both of these as kind of one episode, I think. Like we'll still do a scene by scene. The second episode was written by Dave Filoni, but it was directed by Steph Green. So, quick note there. But the reason I mention that is very smart move with this opening scene, having the crawl and then having the ship. It sucks you into that world right away. And I think it was just an excellent opening scene. Like, we'll get into the scene by scene stuff, but I loved this. I thought this was awesome. It built hype and it was very cinematic, you know?
Well, also, you kick off the Star Warsy music immediately, and it pulls everything together full circle. So not only do you have the opening crawl, but you also have the classic Star Wars ship, like we've seen in A New Hope or Revenge of the Sith, which is also very, very typical Star Wars. And then you get that John Williams-esque musical cue that kicks in right as the ship is pulling into the frame. It was just the perfect start. It was like, you know what's funny is it felt new. Because I feel like we haven't seen it in such a long while. I don't think any of the other Star Wars projects have really made an effort to do that. And I think that immediately separated this right off the bat. I think they incorporated those three elements and did it perfectly.
Yes, and I think it's also worth noting you mentioned the music, which, by the way, Kevin Kiner, I believe, is the one who did this. Incredible job. Just a shout out. And you and I are going to mention this throughout the
a million
episode
times,
breakdown.
yeah.
Highlight of these two episodes, like huge highlight. The musical cues were spot on, so Star Warsy. The themes for each character, masterfully done. It plays such a large part, and you and I talk about it all the time on the show, but it plays such a large part in your emotions and how you react to certain scenes and characters. And they crushed it. They absolutely crushed it with this episode. So I was very happy to see that. The music, the ship, the crawl, it was just quintessentially Star Wars, which is needed and wanted, and you're right. It felt like fresh and new, which was, I don't know, amazing. And this is why Filoni should be at the helm. He knows what he's doing. The guy knows what to do to get all these things together. So to see that translated to live action from a character that he created, massive shout out to him and Kevin Kiner.
Yeah, they make a great duo. And Kevin Kiner's been around for 15 plus years. He did the original Clone Wars movie. So this guy like has it in the bag. They are an ultimate. Yeah, he's an ultimate duo with Dave Filoni.
Yeah. So that's not going to be the last time we mention it. There's a bunch of scenes in here that I noted.
Like I'm going to go off.
Awesome. All right. So the episode opens with this transport traveling through space. Inside the bridge, a navigator droid informs Captain Hale that their ship is entering a different sector. She reports the unidentified starship is approaching the transport. Also very Star Warsy. Captain requests the ships identify themselves, transmit clearance codes. The comma officer reports the ship's crew are claiming to be Jedi, here to see the prisoner, and they are transmitting an old Jedi signal. The captain decides to call their bluff and dispatches security to meet these so-called Jedi. As they approach the hangar, the captain leads some New Republic soldiers, including a Mon Calamari named Jacris, to confront the Jedi. The two cloaked figures exit the shuttle, and it reveals Baylan Skoll, who thanks Hale for allowing them to board the ship. Hale says he's surprised to meet Jedi out here when he remarks their existence remains a mystery to most people. This is a long time after Jedi existed, so his skepticism is
valid.
Warranted. Hale does not buy this. He immediately calls their bluff and calls them Imperial trash. And they push their luck too far.
That's really bold.
Really bold, but I don't blame him. I don't blame him for this reaction in the slightest. Skoll warns Hale that he's making a mistake, even though he's not. He called you out immediately. And then he says Hale says they should have surrendered when they had the chance and asks to scan them for identification. Skoll offers to show their identification before monitoring motioning to his female apprentice, Shin, who I kept forgetting her name, but she's a baddie, to
She's
attack
great.
the New Republic soldiers with her red lightsaber. So they start attacking everybody. Hale starts using the Force, or I'm sorry, he tries to shoot Balin, but Balin uses the Force to suspend his blaster, says, "You were right about one thing. We are no Jedi," and then kills him with the red blaster. So we have this great opening scene where they go to the bridge. They're like, hey, these intruders have killed Captain Hale. Great action sequence here as they break through. They're cutting down people. There's like a hallway scene, very similar to Rogue One, like as Bale's going through. It was something from the trailer that we saw. They're cutting down everyone. And then they find Morgan in this prison cell. They remove the restraints, and Elsbeth thanks Skoll for his word, saying, "You're a man of your word," which I thought was very interesting, which I'd like to get back to, and reveals that Ahsoka Tano was the one who captured her and is seeking to find Grand Admiral Thrawn. That's the first scene of the show, and I think it's amazing. I think it's such a good way to open the show. They did a really good job. There's a bunch of similar Star Wars elements in here that I wanted to see if you picked up on. One, it's very Phantom Menace-esque. It's like the dark side version of Phantom Menace opening scene.
Yep, I was literally really just about to follow up with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then he also has that same line. "You were right about one thing." It's kind of like Phantom Menace when he's like, "The negotiations were short." Similar stuff there. There was another. Oh, the hallway scene from Rogue One. That was also something similar. It also felt like it was just tense. It wasn't corny, too corny. It wasn't too over the top. It felt very like dark and real. And you're like, it's so mysterious. They make this line. Balin makes this line to Morgan, and she's like, "Oh, you're a man of your word." And you're like, who is this guy? It just sucks you in, and you're like, okay, what's going on? And I thought it was just a really, really good opener to the show. What did you think?
It hooks you right away. I think I'm so sad because I knew that Ray Stevenson's character was going to be a primary focus of interest for me personally, and immediately he was. So every time he's on, like, in the frame now, I'm just sad.
Dude, I'm so sad.
Oh my gosh. I have a very, very strong feeling that Ray Stevenson's character probably won't make it past the season anyway. That's just my instinct.
Well, he can't.
He can't, really. And I don't really see like a big future for that character, but knowing that he's gone and this is like his last piece of work is really hard to watch. So every time sad, like he's in a frame, it's like you can't help but be a little bit sad because he's giving an amazing performance here. He's giving a very nuanced, kind of complex interpretation of his character, because you really get the sense that at least like I understood when the character first walks into the frame, his intentions didn't seem to me like he wanted to kill anybody, but if he had to, he's going to.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't seem like an individual who's going to come in and be like, start cutting people down. But he's like, if you are in my way, I will remove you immediately.
Yeah, no, they make you kind of root for him because the what's his name? The captain is being a dick to them. And so you're kind of rooting for him, and you can tell he's showing restraint. Then he gets called out and he has no other choice. He's backed into a corner and he's the kind of guy who's like, I'll fight my way out. I don't care. And the other thing about him is he just commands the screen. I thought throughout both these episodes, you can tell, like, this is another reason why it's sad. We've seen him in shows, TV shows and all that before. Mm-hmm. But the way his character is in this show and the way he interpreted it, he just did such a good job that you can tell, like, there was so much potential for him later on as an actor. And I was just really impressed with him throughout the show. And I wish we would have actually seen more of him in these episodes. I couldn't get enough of this character. It's just very interesting and well done. And there was a mystery here, and there's a creativity behind them. We don't know, are they Sith? Like, what are they?
There's a lot
Jedi,
of mystery and intrigue behind them, lifting them up.
His chemistry with Shin.
Yeah.
Really cool. So
I also she's very much a Spartan brand Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
I watched the first 2 episodes with Dad, and Dad's like, who is she, Scarlett Johansson Jr.? So that it is kind of funny. She's also got like a I shop at Hot Topic kind of vibes. Oh, but dude, I like the character. I think she's very understated next to Balin, because the impression that I get is that Balin is very calm and masterful, and he is the planner, whereas Shin is the executioner. He gives her an order and she carries it out. She doesn't question it. And I
Yeah.
really, really like that dynamic so far. It feels very new and fresh.
Yeah. So excellent opening scene here. I thought it was just fantastic. Like, so good. Then we get to the next scene. Meanwhile, we see Ahsoka Tano for the first time searching some ruins on Arcana. Right, she approaches a circle in the middle of this courtyard, uses her cool little force trick with her two lightsabers to cut a perfect hole and go below. Very Indiana Jones vibes here as
Very much
she's
so.
making her way through this cylindrical structure. Finds the golden snitch from Harry Potter, which I thought was
You mean the
interesting
map
there.
from Treasure Planet?
Yeah, the map from Treasure Planet. Yeah, dude.
Totally.
You're
Dude, the
right.
second she pulled that out, I was like, this is the map from Treasure Planet. And when they
Yeah.
unlock the map later, it looks even more like the map from Treasure Planet.
You're
It's
right.
craziness. And I saw a bunch of people commenting on that too on Twitter. They were posting scenes from Treasure Planet. And they were like, is this not exactly what happened? So
Yeah.
I found that funny.
You're right. And my one complaint, I just thought there was a couple scenes in the show that I think we're like, okay, we get what they're doing. Let's go.
Pick it up a little bit. Yeah.
And this was one where I'm like, you started off so strong. Let's keep it going, especially with the nature of what happens throughout the rest of the scene, which we'll get to. She informs her little droid Huyang, who, by the way, I want to get to that real quick. That she goes to Huyang, says she found the object via comlink, but his comlink's being jammed. I'll get to the Huyang thing in a second. She returns to the surface where she's confronted by the assassin droids. She's surrounded by 5 of them, and she has to fight them. Dons her 2 lightsabers in self-defense and starts fighting them. These droids, the sound design for their voice, so cool.
Yeah.
Like, so cool. The practical effects here, the sweeping landscape shots, like this is the kind of stuff I wanted in Obi-Wan. I wanted more of this in Mando and Book of Boba Fett. Like, I just thought you feel like you're on these worlds more. And I think it was just more immersive. And I think this scene was really it was another cool scene, cool introduction to the character. If you don't know who Ahsoka is, I think this was a pretty good introduction to her, I'd say, especially with the opening
Yeah.
crawl. It's still kind of mysterious. We're like, what's she looking for? You're still interested in, what's going on. So
It doesn't look like she's on a set. I feel like so much of Obi-Wan and maybe not as much in Boba Fett, but definitely in Mandalorian season 3, you can tell they're on sets. You can tell that they are in front of the volume. I was really worried that this scene where she's going through the ruins of the Dathomir temple and when she's jumping down that, it was really going to feel like she was standing in front of the volume. I didn't feel that way at all. I really
feel that
felt
way
like
either.
it was a big, expansive environment that she was walking through. It really felt like she
Yeah.
was on a planet, and that really changes your perception of the episode. You believe it a lot more. So I really appreciated that. On top of that, I don't know how you feel about this, but you can totally tell that they have really touched up, Rosario's makeup for Ahsoka. And in this entire sequence, I just saw Ahsoka. I did not see Rosario. Her mannerisms, the way she was walking, you can really tell that Rosario studied the animated series, Ahsoka. You can tell that she pays attention to her mannerisms. And this is not only something in this scene, but throughout episodes 1 and 2. The way she moves, the way she does specific hand movements, the way she walks, the expression, she makes a specific expression when she's fighting the droids. She holds a pose and then she looks at them and she's like, it's kind of a sarcastic look that she makes
Yeah.
at the droid before she hits
Yeah.
them again. A lot of it just felt very, very Ahsoka, even more so than the first 2 times that we saw her in Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. So I really appreciated that because that tells me that she's actually really been paying attention to the mannerisms and the presentation of the character. I have a
Yeah, and I
couple
think-
qualms when it comes to her interpretation so far, but I think for the most part, she's really making an effort to understand it and present that. And as a Clone Wars and Rebels fan, I really appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree for the most part. There's a couple scenes where I'm having a tough time differentiating between Ahsoka and Rosario, which we can get to later on. But I agree for the most part they have helped it out a lot, and I think a lot of that's Filoni, who's like, her cool hat is like a little different. Her makeup is a little bit more well done. You're right. The facial expressions, the movements, very intentional, And I think sometimes, maybe this is what it is for me. There were some scenes where, maybe it was too intentional, if that makes sense. Where like I almost saw through it a little bit, but we can get to that later. All right, so then she beats these droids in the fight, cuts one of their heads off, and the lead droid says initiate self-destruct. So she has to run away. She contacts Huyang, which tells her that the shuttle's above her position. She starts running away, and they blow up. Now, this part's a little weird to me, to be honest. Sorry, Nitpick Matt's going to come real quick. The explosion from these droids is like nuclear, like this little bomb.
Nuclear.
It's the biggest explosion I've ever seen from such a tiny little bomb. It just decimates the whole planet. Like, it's crazy how big this explosion was as she reaches the ship just in time. I just thought that was kind of funny. Like, okay, that was a massive explosion that these guys had.
Well, I watched your reaction video and I was cracking up because right after the explosion happens, she turns around, she runs, and you went, "Ooh, you need to work on your running form," or whatever you said. Yeah. And it made me laugh so hard. And then as I watched her throughout like the remaining episodes, I kept thinking of that. It's not like a qualm I have. It just cracked me up.
Yeah. Rosario needs some running form lessons. So inside the cockpit, she talks with Huyang about their communication difficulty. He's saying he kept their ship at a safe distance according with Jedi protocol. She's like, well, the Jedi doesn't exist anymore. And he's like, well, it's my programming. And she says, you have to stick close with me, watch my back. He says that's the job of a Padawan, which he is not, which I liked that line a lot. Very Star Wars-y line there. I thought that was fantastic. And then she tells Huyang that she found the map, and he asks how she got Elsbeth to tell the truth, and she replies that she wasn't following Jedi protocol. Interesting there. So maybe she used some mind tricks on her or something like that. But I think that was an interesting line. Now, Huyang, this is what I want to get to. I love this guy.
Yeah, he's great.
one of the great things about Star Wars, in my opinion, is the droids. It might be a stupid thing to like, but they are such a big part of the world. And like R2-D2 and C-3PO, that's a huge part of my memory of Star Wars as a kid. It was such a unique, weird, crazy thing. That's why I got sucked into the universe to begin with, was the creativity behind it. And the droids are such a big part of it. And you see people like, BB-8 is one of the best parts of the sequels, I think. The sound design for it, the creativity behind it, the protocol droids, the droids that we see in Jabba's palace that are getting like tortured and stuff, the Gonk droid, BD-1 from Jedi Survivor Fallen Order. He's one of the best parts of the game. He adds so much to the show. The repair droids from Phantom Menace and like I don't know, droids and they all have unique personalities. What's the one from Rogue One? I always forget his name. The security droid.
IG. Oh God. Oh my God. This is going to drive me insane.
The one from Mando. Like all these droids. Someone can make it in the comments. We suck at remembering things sometimes, and that's what's happening now.
That's going to bother me. I'm going to try to focus on that. I don't want to look it up.
Okay. But I just think the voice acting here is David Tennant, right?
Yes, the Doctor.
Yeah. Dude, okay, so for someone who hasn't seen Rebels, I know this is a character from Rebels, but like this character, this droid character throughout both episodes, I think he had so much. The sound design on the voice, I'm a sound dork. I love I love the creativity behind it. I love like if you ever get a chance to watch the documentary on the sounds of Star Wars, it's awesome. Like how they came up with blaster sounds and all that stuff. Just the way this character is presented, I think, is flawless. Like he looks real. The voice acting is awesome. The way the character's written
is amazing.
So good. So I just have to say that, like, it's one of the standouts to me throughout this show, was like the introduction of the character, what he adds.
I think it's interesting, just on the topic of Huyang. I don't know, the way Rosario was pronouncing the name really confused me because I thought it was Huyang, but she says Huyang, and it's just confusing me. Anyway. The thing I really like about bringing this character into Ahsoka is he is applicable to how Ahsoka is figuring things out across the series, like in regards to the lightsabers, because he's a lightsabers expert and he's helped Jedi forge lightsabers for over 1,000 years. But in terms of the character, the thing that I just really love about this is I think Huyang is applicable to the show in terms of plot. He's helpful to Ahsoka. He provides very funny commentary in regards to both Sabine and Ahsoka and their dynamic with each other. But also, I just find it really funny that David Tennant, who is extremely beloved as an actor, he voiced this niche character once won an Emmy for it in 2012, went for like 12, 13 years without touching the character, and then he just comes back. So I always thought that that was kind of funny because it's not like he spent like a long amount of time doing things for this character. He just did it once, and then everybody freaked out over it. He got awards for it, and then he comes back years later in like the year that he's making a resurgence as an actor, like Good Omens, Doctor Who, a variety of other smaller roles, but he's just had like a big comeback this year, and I just find it funny that Huyang is like an additional in that list.
Yeah, it's awesome. You love to see it.
It's king shit.
It's an awesome, it's an awesome character. So there's a celebration. Oh, I'm sorry. Tano tells Huyang, whatever. I'm probably butchering the name. Sorry, to scan the lightsabers. She wants to look at the map, but she needs the key to activate the map, and none of them know how to approach it. So we go to Lothal. This is a funny scene. It felt very Clone Wars-y here. Like it felt, you know what I mean? Like this, which I like. I think it's cool. Like this kind of was, and a lot of people have said this, it's just like a season 6 of Rebels, right? But you could see Dave Filoni's touch on this throughout in so many different areas. And also just mentioning real quick in that last scene, musical themes we saw here. I think Hera, we hear her musical theme a little bit when she's introduced, which I don't know that character well. And then during this scene, it's like that also added to like the Clone Wars-y feel, you know.
There's so many prequel-y vibes in this, dude. Like the big band music that comes over Lothal when we see it for the first time. It's so prequel-y, but I love it. It's perfect.
Yeah, no, I thought it was awesome. So we see writer Azadi giving a speech. He says that one of the heroes, Sabine Wren, would like to say a few words. She is nowhere to be found. So he tells this guy, hey, can you speak to the crowd? I got to go figure out what's going on. I believe that guy's the voice for Squidward from SpongeBob SquarePants. I don't know where I recognized him before.
No, he's Mr. Krabs.
Mr. Krabs, yeah, I knew he was from SpongeBob. But he's also been in other stuff. I'd have to look up the actor, but he seems well cast. Also, the casting for the show, just real quick note, I think across the board, like, I don't have any complaints with any of the casting choices whatsoever. I haven't seen Rebels, so I don't know. Maybe we can talk about that a little later. But I think the casting for this has just been on point. Like, everyone seems like the character they're supposed to be, and nothing felt forced. You know what I mean?
Clancy Brown has been in a lot of animated projects. The character that he's playing, Ryder Azadi, is the governor of Lothal, and he was a prominent character in season 4 of Rebels. To jump a little bit ahead of you, the senator that he introduces...
Yeah.
The senator that he introduces is Jai Kell, which is another character from season 1 of Rebels that Ezra was at the Imperial Academy with, and he escaped with him. So it was like a niche little cameo from that character. But what was funny is I recognized him immediately, and I was shocked. I even remember that because that character was so minuscule in season 1. Like, he did not have a major part, but I was like, that's Jai Kell from that one Imperial arc in season 1 of Rebels.
Dude, your memory's crazy. The fact you can remember all this.
I was shocked, dude. And I was like, he was played by Dante Bosco. Like, I could not believe that I remembered it. But anyway, you had a thought. Sorry, go ahead.
The guy's name you just said, the guy who plays the governor, Clancy Brown, Shawshank Redemption is what he's from.
Yes.
That's where I recognize him from. He's the guard in Shawshank Redemption. He just looks way older. That's why I was having a tough time recalling it. So anyways, he wants Sabine Wren to talk. She's not here. Then we get the introduction to this character, riding a speeder bike, listening to like rock and roll music.
No, Beastie Boys. It was Beastie Boys Sabotage.
Yeah, it was Star Wars Beastie Boys Sabotage. I don't know. I didn't love this introduction, to be honest, to the character. I felt like this was really forced. I get what they're trying to do. You're trying to establish her as like a no-nonsense, I don't play by the rules thing. But like, it just felt very tropey. Like, a lot of stuff they did with Sabine in both these episodes felt very tropey. And I still think it communicates who the character is. I just think they maybe have done it in a less like telegraphed way. The music was cool. Like, I like how they do the Star Wars-y music thing. I just think it felt a little weird to me. And like, it's like, I don't take no shit. Also, rude, dude. They asked you to speak at this event and you just blow it off. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'm looking at the character and I'm like, oh, what an asshole. Like, you were supposed to speak at this thing. They're trying to like honor you. And you're just like, nah, I don't play by the rules. I ride my motorbike thing and I listen to the Beastie Boys.
It's a little bit Top Gunny too, if we're being honest. It's a bit Maverick of her, like riding the motorcycle speeder thing super fast, and then she ends up going past the Republic ships underneath. So I totally hear you. It's extremely tropey. The music was extremely jarring for me upon the first watch. I was like, ooh, I don't know if that works. And then I watched it the third time and I was like, all right, this is fine. This isn't ruining it for me. But there were a couple things about Sabine in these episodes that were not quite there for me. I think as a whole, Natasha Bordizio, whose birthday it is today, so happy birthday to her. The core of the character is there. There was just some things that I was like, that felt like a weird choice. But I hear you. It's definitely extremely tropey, and I think it might have come on maybe a bit too strong.
Yeah, and these are tough scenes to do, by the way, because I understand what they're doing. You're introducing a new character, and you have to express it without saying too much. They're showing, not telling, which is a hard thing to do for a brand new character, and you're trying to show who that person is. Now, it still accomplished that goal, in my opinion. I just think it was a little too on the nose. I think one of the best introductions to a character of all time is Kendall from Succession. I know you may not have watched that yet. It's one of the best shows ever. In the first scene, they just establish who this guy is by he's trying to get a business deal done with this guy, and you can tell he's not a killer. He's not like he doesn't have those business instincts to get something done, and you can tell he's a little awkward and he's forcing it, but they just do such a good job of telling you everything you need to know about this guy in a 2-minute scene, in a 5-minute scene. So it's a hard thing to do, I think, but it doesn't ruin the show for me at all. It was just like, I'm watching it, I'm just kind of like, ugh. And she like rides past the New Republic guys. They're like, don't do it. And she just speeds past them and runs away. And I'm like, why are you running away from the speech? I don't get it. Anyways, doesn't matter. Like
so minor, but it's like,
yeah, yeah. Funny. So then she goes to her little communications tower. Also, they do a little Star Wars screen wipe. The transitions in this, dude, they matter. You and I have talked about this in so many shows. Those Star Wars transitions, the PowerPoint presentation transitions, they matter, dude. They look awesome. It's so Star Warsy to do that, and they did that with a couple of the scenes here. Like, and it just reminds you that that's the world you're in, and I loved that. So they get her back to her communications tower. She has her little like pet cat thing. What are they called? Loth cats.
Loth cats.
Really good practical effects on this. If it is practical, if it's not, I don't know. Like, just so well done in terms of
very Muppety
the effects for this. Yeah, very Muppety. 100%.
I really liked it. It's so Star Warsy when they have those normal Muppety effects. I don't know. It takes me more in as opposed to if it's CGI. Now they did use some CGI for the movement of the Loth cat that was a little bit more complex than just puppetry, but I didn't mind. It made sense to blend both of those. This
was really cool. Very good attention to detail. I love that, and I think that deserves a shout out. She's going through her stuff. She sees this recording of Ezra Bridger, who they've name dropped a couple times at this point. And this might, I'll get to my thought after this. So she has this little recording thing. She's going through her stuff, and she plays this little message she has from Ezra, who just like he uses the content of the message to just friend zone her, like make it abundantly clear they're just friends and nothing more. Which I thought was kind of funny.
I have thoughts.
He's like, I love you. Dude. I love you like a sister. We're like family.
But then it's like I love you like a sister.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. If you watch Star Wars Rebels, you can never really tell what the true nature of their relationship actually is, because in the first season they explicitly show you that Ezra has a crush on her. That he's infatuated with her.
This is a question I had for you as we get to not context Rebel stuff. I don't think this was communicated great in this scene for someone who hasn't watched that show. I was left a little confused as to who Ezra is. Like, I know who he is, but like if I'm a complete virgin to anything Rebels, I don't think they did a really good job. Obviously we know he's like kind of missing, but it was kind of like there's some weird dialogue there where it wasn't super clear of like what they were. Like, did he have a crush on her, or like did they date? Well, not, because he friend zoned her
immediately.
Like,
but she was also gazing very romantically at him. So
so what are they? So explain to me. What's the deal?
in season 1, they are very explicit about the fact that he has a crush on her, and she does not really reciprocate, obviously. When the show starts, Ezra is 14, Sabine is 16. It is a very hormonal teenager-y thing. As the show progresses, the two of them get really, really close. Sabine is trained by Kanan in a similar way that Ezra was trained by Kanan, so they kind of bond over that. And then by the time you get to the end of the series, these two have a very strong bond. So when Ezra makes the decision to sacrifice himself, he counts on Sabine to distract everybody so he can do it. And kind of drops like a very vague hint about, hey, come find me when this is done. So in this way, like, she feels like she owes this to him to go get him. But the weird thing is that I need to bring up right now is the fact that the timeline of this is very strange to me, which I hope they dive into this. Rebels takes place right before A New Hope. So when the show starts, it's about 4 years before A New Hope. And when the show ends, it's like 1 year before A New Hope happens. So in the time that the original trilogy takes place, that's probably about 4 years, right? I think, over the original trilogy. If Rebels takes place over a 4-year period, you're adding another 4 years on top of that. So 4 plus 4 is 8. And then 8 plus 5, which would be the 5 years after Return of the Jedi, which is when The Mandalorian takes place, and it's the same timeline that Ahsoka takes place.
Okay.
We're talking like close to like 15 years.
Oh, okay. So that was my next question for you, actually, because we kind of the last scene when they're on Lothal or whatever, and they're talking, they're like, "It's been many years since we defeated the Empire," and you're like, "Okay, be more vague. Like, what's the timing here?" I thought that was kind of like they were just so unspecific about it.
So I'm still, and again, I don't know if I'm entirely correct. So guys, if I'm wrong, feel free to jump in the comments and correct me on this. But I'm pretty sure it's, if you take the 4 years that Rebels took place, you add the 4 years, no, excuse me, I'm going to retract. The original trilogy probably took place over 3 years, I think. Right? Is that safe to say? Let's do the math on
more
this.
than that. Let's Google
How long?
How long between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi? 3 years. Yeah, you're right. 3 years.
Okay, so that would be 4 years.
No, that's in The Empire Strikes Back.
What?
So only 4 years passed total. So the 3 years between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and then another year to Return of the Jedi.
Okay, so 4 plus 4 is 8 years. If Ahsoka takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi, which it does, that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
No. I'm misspeaking right now. I'm getting totally confused. We got to start from the end of Rebels. So if we start from the end of Rebels, which is when Ezra disappears, he's gone for 9 years. It would be 9.
Okay, so, all right, that makes sense then. So that's a long time.
That's a long time. So now I'm confused.
So what could they be? Okay, so I asked this in the second episode during my reaction. Where could they possibly be? Are they like lost? Are they in a prison somewhere? Like Thrawn and Ezra is what I'm talking about. Like,
they're in another galaxy. Because if you look at the map, when
do they not have ships in that galaxy?
When they unlock the map, it's like, we'll get to this, but Morgan Elsbeth says they are trapped across time and space. So it's not just like if we're in one galaxy here, you know, like the concept of black holes in our universe, whatever.
Oh, got it.
You'd have to jump through a black hole to get to another universe. Ezra and Thrawn are in another universe. Like they're in another galaxy. So there's an entirely separate galaxy that they got banished to across time and space.
And how could there be a map to it? That's another thing that I'm like,
why are there so many maps to places?
So
like
maps.
who came up with the concept of a map to Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy? Did like Luke just leave that for people? I don't know. The concept of maps.
Maybe I don't know, the Morgan is like a Dathomir Night Sister or whatever, so she probably has some magic that she can do. So I'm willing to suspend disbelief for that. But also, by the way, I'm just remembering now, weren't they supposed to be wiped out, the Night Sisters, by Grievous? So I guess that's another one.
Yeah, but I guess not all the night. I guess much like Order 66, all the Night Sisters survived.
They're still around.
No, but to answer your question in short regarding Ezra, I believe I was thinking previously from the beginning of Rebels to where we are now, 5 years after Return of the Jedi, which is closer to 15 years. I think Ezra and Thrawn have been missing for 9 years. I think that's correct. Wow. Which is still weird. but
Yeah, that wasn't
whatever.
communicated very clearly, and
Yeah.
here we are, kind of like confused about it. That was a point that I was kind of like, I don't
Also,
really know what's going on with that. You know, I
also,
get they have a map and they're looking for this guy, but
dude,
you know,
that would make Sabine like 30.
oh wow, yeah, I guess
Because
so. She doesn't seem like it. She seems like she's like 25.
because she acts like she's a teenager. That is part of the interpretation of the character that I did not love is the fact that she's supposed to be, I believe, a 30-year-old woman and she's acting the way that she is. Like I
Skipping out
get
on
it. It makes
speeches.
sense. It makes sense given her character in Rebels if she was a little bit younger, but dude, you're pushing 30 and you're acting like I don't know.
All right, so moving on then. She's chilling at her place. We go to Arcana, and we see Balin and this Inquisitor named Merrick. I don't know how to pronounce that. Interesting
Maroc.
character. Definitely some medieval inspiration drawn here. He looks like kind of like a medieval knight, which I thought was kind of cool. Kind of like I mean, he's an Inquisitor, right? So we see him.
Maybe
He's
one of
with
the last Inquisitors.
Yeah. So we see them with Shin and Morgan Elsbeth in the destroyed ruins. They're looking for the map. They don't find it. And then Morgan sends, what's her name? Shin to Lothal to retrieve the map. And Balin, again, commanding this scene. I thought all the scenes and the music with these bad guys was like so good.
Perfect.
It was so good. And he's like, you're looking for Sabine. So again, more intrigue with him. We're like, how do you know that much? Like, how do you know what's going on? Who is this guy? You know, which I don't think we're supposed to know yet, but it's still like he's just really intriguing. You know what I mean? And he's just commanding. So I thought that was really cool. So they send her to go get Sabine.
I
Essentially,
also, this is going to sound kind of out of left field maybe, but I actually appreciate that she is an apprentice who listens to her master. And she's like, okay. Like, she doesn't question him. She looks to him for guidance, and he's like, yeah, go do the thing. And she doesn't try to stand up to him or be like, no, why are we doing that? She
no, she's
questions
kind of
things,
yeah,
but she's obedient. And
yeah,
I really like that. I think that makes her more intimidating and more formidable because she listens to her master.
yeah.
And I think that's cool. She's understated.
I was just gonna say that she's understated and she doesn't overdo it. Whoever this actress is, I forget her name. Very good, very good job.
Ivana something.
She's great. I like her a
Yeah.
lot. And then okay, moving on. Next scene, we go to back to Sabine. She meets up with Ahsoka. Another question for you here, because there's some like tension between them. Because from what I understand, Sabine used to be Ahsoka's apprentice, I guess.
Dude, this is a new concept to Rebels fans. Everybody
Okay.
who has watched Rebels is like, where did this come from?
Yeah, so I thought this was a little weird. They meet up, and then the governor's like, "Where were you?" And she's like, "Oh, did I miss that?" And again, I'm like, "You jerk! He invited you to come speak at a thing, and you just left." Like, I don't know. It made me not like her a little bit in this scene. And then
Fair.
there's this weird tension between Ahsoka and her, and I don't really get what that was. Was that supposed to be the feeling there, or I don't know.
I don't know because again, this relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine as master and apprentice previously is completely new to people who have watched Rebels. There was nothing implied about it. Now, again, 9 years have passed since Rebels ended. That leaves a lot of space for untold stories. So I'm
So
open
okay, so
to
maybe
this
it's
concept.
intentional. Yeah, so
Yeah,
maybe we're not supposed to know yet. Okay,
yeah.
fine. I just didn't know if maybe this was something from the show that I missed. You know.
This is
So they
completely
go back
new.
to her ship, and there's definitely tension in the air as they're like kind of catching up, talking on the ship. Ahsoka's asking for help on like deciphering the map, and Sabine's like, "Yeah, can I take it with me?" And she's like, "No, obviously not. I almost got blown up for this. I kind of need
Valid.
it." Yeah, and then she goes into the other room with Huyang, and he's showing her the lightsaber match that he did. They come to the conclusion Balin was yet another Jedi who survived Order 66, and we don't know who Shin is. We don't know who this chick is, where she came from, where he found her. She is force sensitive, so
So let me ask you a question about this. Who do you think Shin is? Because she cannot be older than 20 or 25, which is the amount of time that it's been since the Clone Wars. So she would have had to been born during the end of the Clone Wars or maybe a little bit beforehand or maybe a little bit after. So I seen a theory going around where she could have possibly be Balin's daughter. I've seen that theory going around. What do you think about that? Because her age doesn't she could not have been a Jedi given her age. She just couldn't have been.
yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I think the theory of being his daughter is a reasonable one. She also could have been, maybe he just found someone who's force sensitive in his travels. We don't know anything about him, so it's too hard to
Mm,
speculate right now. You know what I mean? I don't
mm-hmm.
really know.
It's still fun to take a
Um,
guess, though. I mean, that'd be kind of cool if it was his daughter.
yeah, that's a good concept. He is very father-like to her, so it wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
surprise me. Um, but yeah, so we go to this next scene. Oh, I'm sorry. After they go out from the lightsaber thing, we see Sabine is left with the snitch from Harry
Wow,
Potter.
shocking.
She runs off with it. I'm like, why'd you leave her alone with it? She was obviously going to do that. And then we get one of my favorite scenes in this episode, which is we see Shin, very Darth Maul esque from Phantom Menace,
Yeah.
standing in the corner. Music here is phenomenal. The music was just awesome with the two droids scouting out, trying to find Sabine in that awesome ship they have. I thought this was just like so dope. What did
She
you
was
think?
doing her best Darth Maul there. It was so good, dude, and the parallels were very obvious. Somebody took that scene and they compared it with the scene from The Phantom Menace, and it matches up shot for shot. It's a direct callback, which
Yeah,
I just think is amazing. It's so cool. Also,
that's really
side
cool.
note, I think it's interesting, too, that Balin and Shin are dressed... well, Balin's more black, but Shin's dressed in a lot of browns, which is not very Sith-like. I think there's more of a tendency on the dark side of the Force for both of those characters, but I don't think they're completely committed as shown in like their
No.
lightsaber color, but I also think their outfits reflect that a little bit too.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're unique. It's creative. Whatever they are, good. It seems fresh and new. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
typical stuff we're used to. So I don't know. I loved that scene, and like they just made her look badass. They weren't trying
Mm-hmm.
too hard. I think something that we can do is the creators of shows want someone to be a badass so bad that you force it on the viewer,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't feel natural. This felt very natural. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It flowed very nicely. We go to Sabine's apartment. She's sitting there trying to figure it out. I thought this scene was a little drawn out, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there.
Chilling out there, trying to figure out what's going on with her little cat. And then we see Ahsoka talking with Hera for a little bit. This was kind of snooze fest where they're like talking, and it just kind of lost my interest a little bit. It also felt a little dense. They're talking about like how Ahsoka walked away from Sabine, and I felt kind of out of the loop. Like I didn't really know what was going on there.
I don't know that anybody was supposed to, but this is something that I'm anxious about. I really hope they touch on this in the series because there seemed to be a lot of regret in Ahsoka's tone where she was like, I walked away from Anakin. He never got to finish my training. And I walked away from Sabine. So the question that I have is Ahsoka walking away because she's afraid of a similar outcome like with Anakin? Is that why she left her? Is because she was afraid that she was going to fail as a master or that her apprentice would disappoint her? I think there's a lot to unpack there because if you notice too in The Mandalorian, she also was like, no, Din, I'm not going to train Grogu,
Yeah.
which was very interesting to me. So I hope they don't drop that. I want them to delve into that and maybe her complex emotions over what happened with Anakin because she knows at this point. She finds out in Rebels that Vader is Anakin and she knows that Luke Skywalker is Anakin's son. So I really want to dig into those emotions more. Like show me
Yeah, I
more
think
on
we
that.
will. I think we will. I
So,
think right now, this first episode, the first two are just setting up the overarching plot, which I think they did a good job of that, generally speaking. But this scene, not a ton to discuss there, in my opinion. And then, right as Sabine figures out the map, of course, the bad guys come and attack. So she tells Huyang she needs support, goes inside, finds her lightsaber, comes down, and Shin is down there, ignites her lightsaber, and they start fighting. This is the last scene of the show. We see them in this lightsaber fight. At the end of it, we all know what happens. Sabine ends up getting bested by Shin, who seems to be a much better fighter, more trained, more with it. Not surprising. She's more advanced, which is a shocking way to end the episode. But I have a couple problems with this. Number one, the fight choreography it just was too telegraphed. It was too 1, 2, 3, 4, and then like the moment where she falls on the ground and her hands like on the ground back there, and she's
yeah.
like, holding the lightsaber up. I was just like, it didn't feel natural. There's a lot of elements and a lot of beats in this episode that felt very natural, and I don't think this was one of them. It just didn't click in the way I would have liked it to. It was still pretty good, but it just wasn't as intense. What's the word I'm looking for? Like raw. You feel
Engaging?
like well, no, like just the fighting style. You'd feel like they'd both be a little bit like Kylo Ren-esque, like
Yeah.
unpolished. like in the way they fight, and it just felt too like we're spoiled by prequel lightsaber fights, in my opinion.
I think so. I think so too, but I also feel like their fighting style is going to be a little bit more rigid because they are not Jedi. I mean, Sabine.
But no, I wanted it to be more like fierce and
yeah,
rigid,
yeah, a little bit more like throwing punches, like Kylo Ren and Rey's fight in The Force Awakens, maybe.
Yes,
maybe a little bit more like that.
Yes.
Yeah, like they're throwing punches.
Yeah, I didn't love the fighting here. I thought it was fine. It was good, and it was a good way to end the episode, I thought, with her getting stabbed, although not really, because in the thumbnail of the next episode, she's in it, like Sabine's in it. So you're like, okay, well.
I also, my biggest issue with this is I really, 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 really feel like they're devaluing lightsabers here. And I know that's going to sound, maybe that's not the best way to put it, but like, how many times has somebody been stabbed at this point and not died from a lightsaber wound?
It's so annoying. Qui-Gon is rolling in his Force Ghost grave.
He is clowning right now. But like in the Phantom Menace, it's a big moment. He is stabbed and he dies pretty quick. And I know that there are going to be some people. Well, he didn't have healthcare. Nobody could get him to healthcare right away. Okay, fine. I just feel like it's diminishing the impact of what a lightsaber is capable of.
I agree,
which is
and
probably a better way to put it.
They've done it too many times. They did it with the Inquisitor. They've done it with this chick now. Like,
or Reva. The Reva thing drove me crazy. She gets stabbed through the stomach twice and lives both times.
Yeah, it's like it does. It's not impactful, dude. What would have been more impactful, and I think they did this great in episode 2, actually, is when Dooku cuts off Anakin's arm and forces him away. Mm-hmm. That would have been better. They cut off her. This chick cuts off her arm or something like that, or injures her, swipes her across the face or something. I don't know. And I know that's kind of tropey too, but I would have preferred that, I think, to her getting full on stabbed, because now you've had this big moment where she gets stabbed and you're like, oh no, and then the next episode starts and you're like, oh, she's fine. Immediately she's fine. And
well, there need to be consequences. There need to be consequences to her
race
fighting.
It.
Like she definitely needed to get hurt. She definitely needed to get injured. That's a very important part of the character because she sucks with the lightsaber and she's clearly not in control of her emotions and she rushes into something that she's clearly not ready for. It would have been so impactful had Shin given her an injury that's kind of a mark of that unpreparedness. Maybe kind of serves as a reminder throughout the entire series. Like, one thing I do like about the Kylo Ren and Rey fight in The Force Awakens is the fact that Rey cuts his face.
Mm-hmm.
I do kind
but
of
he
like
also
that.
Like he's so fierce and like brutal with his movements. He's just better than her, and I think that would have been better portrayed here too, where like if Shin just absolutely overwhelmed Sabine to a point where like then she injures her and she's about to come down, and then maybe there's a Deus Ex Machina moment where someone comes down and like stops it from actually happening, and Sabine's just sitting there like, oh, I just got demolished. I'm lucky I walked away from that alive. You know what I mean? Instead of getting stabbed.
Ahsoka could have force pushed Shin away, and then Shin could have got, maybe the droids overwhelmed Ahsoka and then Shin got away. There just could have been a million other ways that could have made it more impactful. But I don't know. I just found myself being like, that's a little bit stereotypical. Yeah. You know, it was probably the least interesting route that they could have taken. Anyway, the music ends here.
Yeah.
The end.
Music ends here. End of episode. So let's just jump into the second one too, because this is essentially one episode. Good way to end it. I was surprised, if you haven't seen my reaction. That actually genuinely did surprise me, but it's ruined by the first 2 minutes of the first episode. We open up with Ahsoka looking over Sabine as she's just recovering from the lightsaber room. She's fine. She's in the hospital room. No big deal.
She had healthcare. She had good Jedi healthcare.
She's totally fine. She had a good HMO plan. Sabine mentions that she opened the map, saw 2 connected galaxies, and beat one of the droids that attacked her. So Ahsoka gets an idea, leaves to investigate. She goes to the home. Go ahead.
The map being open, just real quick, I don't know if I commented on this. You know how everybody was theorizing that the Ahsoka logo is the world between worlds? Mm-hmm. It's definitely not that. It's the map to Thrawn, because if you look at the end credits too, the glow that goes throughout the end credits are hopping from planet to planet that make the map to Thrawn.
Okay. I actually did see some stuff about that.
I think we're still going to see the world between worlds. I think that's still going to be a prominent player in this show, but that's just something I wanted to call out real quick.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it took her most of the season to get to Thrawn, which I think would be fine.
Yeah.
I think would be fine. let's not rush it. Tell the story the way it needs to be told, however quickly or slowly it needs to be told. So Ahsoka goes back to Sabine's home at Lothal. She is greeted by the Lothcat, and she's jumped by another assassin droid from the previous night. Ahsoka makes quick work of it. They go back to the hospital to try to extract the droid's memory. The droid begins to overheat and explode. Huyang panics and shuts down the droid's head, but they get the information they need in the beginning of time. Also very tropey here. I thought, like, I'm hacking into the mainframe, and like, oh, you got to do it before it explodes.
Some of the dialogue there gave me secondhand embarrassment. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, but some of it was good. When he goes, that's because you're a hologram, I thought that was like a good...
No. That line made me laugh. I thought that was great. I mean Sabine's dialogue there. There are a couple moments sprinkled, especially, I would say, more so throughout the second episode than the first, with dialogue where I was like, I'm getting a little bit of secondhand embarrassment here. Yeah. So, like, it wasn't enough to completely derail me throughout the episode, but some of Sabine's dialogue being like, kind of like me, this droid is incredibly resilient. I was ooh, don't like that as much, you know? So there are like bits and pieces of that. Again, it wasn't enough to make me go, I hate it, but it was just like, ooh, didn't love that.
No, I agree. And could she have been a little bit more hurt? Like, a little bit more groggy or something? Like, you just had your insides ripped
Burned
by a lightsaber. Yeah.
I just think she looked a little too upkept. But Huyang's comment of, that's because you're a holo... It's just perfect. I think he's the best companion. They could not have picked a better droid to come into the show. Also, David Tennant's voice acting is fantastic. So no complaints on Huyang's side of things.
He's fantastic. So they figure out the droid came from Corellia in one of the Morgan Elsbeth factories. She's like, hey, I'll meet you there, Hera. Let's go see what's going on. Sabine's like, I want to go too. And they're like, no, you just got stabbed. Chill out, dude.
Also, so Ahsoka's Hera, kind of cold to her. She's like, no, you didn't.
Yeah, she is. She's being very moody to her, which is strange. So that's another thing where I'm kind of like, what's going on? Can we explain this a little bit more?
She's very reserved and stoic in this, which I'm having a hard time getting a good read on, but again, the show's still so early that I don't know if I want to lock it in yet and be like, why is she like this?
Yeah, we're early. Like, give me a couple more episodes and then
we'll figure it out. Yeah.
We check in with Morgan, the Night Sister Morgan, as she meets with Baylan and Shin at a Night Sister ritual site. She taps into her powers and opens the map that Shin returned to her, and this is supposedly the destination of Grand Admiral Thrawn. They call it the Pathway to Peridia, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Which is an old Jedi fairy tale told to younglings. Morgan says Thrawn calls her across space and time, and they must complete the Eye of Sion.
The Eye of Sauron.
Zion.
I see you, Dave Filoni.
I see you. You cannot hide.
Dude, that
interesting
is the
here.
most
So I guess maybe it is her
Dave
her Night Sister powers. That's what's connecting all this, which I think is that's fine. I think that's good writing. You know, that's
extremely Lord of the Ringsy.
Yeah,
he's delving deep into his origins here.
Then they say they must complete I don't know what that means, the Eye of Sion. Then she asks Merrick to complete his task and then leaves.
So I have a thought here. I didn't know what the Eye of Sion is until the very end. It's like their little machine thing that's going to launch them across the galaxy to try to find Thrawn. That's what they're building. The Eye of Sion is what they're building, I believe, to launch them into the next galaxy. It's like some kind of machine. I didn't catch on to that.
Yeah, that was kind of
like
at the end we see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I didn't catch on to that the first time, and then the second time I watched it,
seems to be like a Purgil harnesser or something.
Yeah, and I don't know if you
because
saw
at the end of the
this
scene you also see Baylan. Wait, I didn't get a chance to read this, but Baylan's like looking up and he's talking to what's her name, Shin. About it, and like he looks up and you can kind of see stuff moving through the clouds, which kind of looked like a Purgil. Yeah. So I think that is kind of a clue to what they're doing.
Yeah, they're harnessing the power of the Purgil to get across, because the Purgil can travel through hyperspace. That's why Ezra launched himself and Thrawn to the other galaxies, because he knew he can talk to the Purgil through the Force.
Yeah, so I think this was an element that needed to be explained better, because I knew a little bit about that from Mando and from our conversations, but I don't know. Like, if you're a random person watching this, you're gonna have no idea what's going on, what he's looking at in the sky, what any of this is, and there's no clue to it whatsoever. What happened to Thrawn? What happened to Ezra? How'd they got there? There wasn't any explanation for that, and I think that was a huge gap in both of these episodes. That if I'm just walking in, I've never watched any animated Star Wars or much Star Wars at all, I'm interested in this new cool character that I've seen in billboards in Hollywood, and I want to watch this show, I'd be pretty lost. Same way I'd be lost with the new season of Mando, where you're like, how did Grogu get back with
Get
Mando?
back.
Like, you
It,
got to take this stuff into account. You have to pretend like your audience hasn't watched this stuff before, you know?
yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if they necessarily covered everything as well as they might have. I think the show relies pretty strongly on the audience's knowledge of Star Wars Rebels, or at least the last season, which I think is a little problematic. I don't know if it's enough to blow the show out of the water yet, but I think that they're still going to have to unpack a lot of stuff if they want people to be able to follow. Because, like I said, I was watching it with Dad, and Dad was really confused on a lot of stuff.
I
But
was too. I was
oh,
too, and
man.
I'm like, I got to talk to Melissa about some of this because I don't know if I'm supposed to know or not know, and I already also know kind of bits and pieces already because we've already kind of talked about it in some of our trailer breakdowns and some of that, so I already have some context, but still, I was a little disappointed with the lack of explanation for some of this stuff. Like, I don't want it to become too much like Marvel, where you have to have watched everything to know exactly what's going on next, and that's a little bit the direction we're going with Star Wars, and I don't love that.
Yeah.
Each thing needs to stand on its own, still relating to the other stuff, but it needs to be able to stand on its own to connect these worlds so that someone can watch something and go, oh, hey, this was interesting. Let me go watch this thing. And then it makes sense for them. You know, it still enhances the experience, but you can't do it linearly where you have to watch this stuff in this order for it to all make sense. You need to be able to
Yeah.
jump around, you know, and have it still all be connected.
They have to be self-contained. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Shin asks her master what happens when they find Thrawn, and he says, "For some it means war, for others a new beginning." Cool line. Balin here is awesome. I love this scene. He's such a badass. He's such a cool
so
character.
cool.
Then he sends her to Corellia to help out Merrick.
Marek
So let me
and
see. Ahsoka and Hera on Corellia, greeted by Min Weaver, the region's supervisor. This guy's a dork.
With the dude, he is like a Spartan brand Michael Scott. I swear to you,
He kind of is.
he
Yeah.
is like an older, and his nose is huge. I don't know if you checked out the
Yeah.
size of his nose.
No,
It's
he's
massive.
he did a good job. This actor did a really good job.
Yeah.
They say the New Republic should have seized all of Morgan's assets, and Weaver refuses to show Hera and Ahsoka around. He's being a little shady, and he's eventually forced to give in. He also has an interesting line here. They ask, like, what happened to all the former Imperials? And they're like, they work here, which I thought was an interesting little tidbit, you know? Like, what did happen to those guys? There was a lot
a
of them.
really
And they were
interesting
like,
question
they're
to
not
ask.
loyal to anybody. They take a paycheck, and they explain that nicely here. So I thought that
Yeah.
was cool. Nice job.
Yeah,
Nice
I think
writing.
that was nice. It was extremely Clone Warsy too in execution. You know, it just reminded me of all those typical arcs where Anakin and Ahsoka, they go to a planet, probably Mandalore, they find the corrupt leader, Almec, you know, and then they have to confront. Like, the structure of this was extremely Clone Warsy in execution, even up to like the line delivery at the end, which, by the way, I wasn't super impressed with, but we can get to that.
Sure. Then they say, Hera, yeah, she questions their loyalty. They say they're all loyal to money over the Empire, which isn't necessarily true, but for some of them, I'm sure it is. During the ride, they ask about Sabine. Ahsoka waves it off. She's being very standoffish again. She's like, hey, do you want to make her your apprentice again? She's coming to bat for Sabine. She really wants it to happen. And she's like, well, what makes someone ready? And Ahsoka's like, you just know. You know when you know, and so do they. Okay. Cool. That means
Cool
nothing.
answer, not what she was looking for.
Yeah. And then checking in with Sabine, Huyang notices her lightsaber. She corrects that it's Ezra's, but she says she modified it. He says she modified it, so it's now hers. He asks if she kept up with her training, and she said Ahsoka doesn't want to train her. Huyang essentially tells them to both get over it and move forward,
Yeah.
which is funny.
I
She
love how
compares
he
her-
calls her out too. He's like, "You're
Yeah.
making excuses."
Yeah.
Good.
He's a really,
Drag her.
really well-written character, like a cool Jedi droid. You know, he
Yeah.
has that programming in him. Oh, back with Ahsoka and Hera, Weaver takes him to the control center. They see this hyperdrive core. They start asking questions. This guy's getting a little flustered. Hera tries to pull rank. She's like, well, I'm the general, and I can do whatever I want. You want to bet? And she's being really sassy. I didn't love the dialogue here, to be quite honest.
I don't know if it's the dialogue, but I'm struggling the most with Mary Winstead as Hera above everybody else. I am really struggling with her interpretation of the character. It wasn't bad the first time, and then I was like, oh, okay, like this is fine. I don't love it, but I can get past it. The third time I watched it, Matt, I feel like she's being a caricature of Hera as opposed to Hera herself. Like I just don't feel the character, and I feel like a lot of it is in her line delivery. Like you know how we watched that one part, that one clip when it first came out. She has moments sprinkled throughout both these episodes where she feels like Hera, like little moments where I'm like, that was very Hera, you know, like or the dialogue of "keep your lid on, Chop," things like that. But then like the rest of the scene just feels very, very clunky and honestly, again, the secondhand embarrassment just completely took me over. I was like, ugh. I'm probably struggling with her most of all, and not just like in her acting, but also the makeup and the prosthetics aren't 100% there for me either. Like I still really feel like she's wearing a costume. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna be frank, I've seen cosplayers do better.
Yeah, you're right. It does kind of feel cosplay-y.
It just does not feel authentic. And I'm really struggling with her above everybody else. Now, again, it could be a matter of give these actors and actresses more time to dig into their characters. Like maybe the more the episodes go on, maybe the more natural it'll feel. Again, it's very early. I'm completely open to it. But I'm not loving the vibes I'm getting from her in particular at this moment. Like I don't really know if she embodies Hera for me quite
Yeah,
yet.
I agree with that. I agree with all that. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It just doesn't feel fully there yet, which is fine, and it might get there. I just this episode it did stand out to me a bit more as well. So I agree with you. Blah blah blah. Okay, so then this guy's getting flustered. The protocol droid in the room starts telling the truth about these assassin droids that were on the planet, and all the workers are like, "Ah, oh, she spilled the beans." And then the ship with the hyperdrive begins to take off, and Hera's like, "Hey, don't do that." And then this guy's like, "For the Empire," and starts shooting. We get a little bit of
Maybe
a
next
fight.
time he could shoot first and then yell for the Empire after.
Yeah, for the Empire,
He
or
could
not
go.
yell anything. Be a little bit more subtle.
Maybe don't give the heroes a chance to kill you.
Yeah. So they make quick work of them. Ahsoka's ready for the attack. She uses her spidey senses to kill them. Seen from the trailer as she jumps out of the broken glass and starts racing for the Phantom. Or, I'm sorry, Hera starts racing for the Phantom as Chopper starts the engines. We get some Chopper action in here. And then as Ahsoka leaps out the window, we see Merrick and they start fighting. Dun dun dun. Hera takes off after the ship, which starts firing on her. Chopper gives all of his sassiness as he is also a great again droid like
Yeah.
addition to the Star Wars universe. This guy, I don't know a ton about him. Like I haven't watched Rebels, but like I have seen clips and I know some stuff. And it's a very funny, interesting character. Also voiced by Dave Filoni, which is hilarious. The sound design for him, I think, again, amazing. Like there's so much personality with this little droid. So I really, really love that. Hera
He's
takes off after
great.
the transport ship. He suggests like shooting it down and just like letting it kill a bunch of people, which I thought was funny. She's like, "We can't do that." And he's like, "Why? Who cares?"
He's notorious for that. Chopper like straight
Yeah.
up kills people in Rebels, and I think everybody's just excited about that potential coming back.
Yeah, he has a kill count, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
That's hilarious. How many? It's got to be a lot, right?
I don't know. I think there's a compilation on YouTube,
That's
which I think
hilarious.
we'd have to look up, but it's pretty
Yeah.
funny.
Ahsoka's fighting Merrick. We see this. This is a clip we broke down a couple episodes ago, so we've already kind of talked about it. I still think the fighting here is a little choppy. It could have been a little bit better. It is really hard to capture Ahsoka's fighting style, though, in live action. So I
Yeah.
will caveat it by saying that hers is very fast and aggressive, and the way they did it, especially in the last season of Clone Wars, it's really hard to replicate that. So, but I did think it could have been. You know, there was a couple scenes like when she's both the lightsabers are up and like they both hit her and she kind of moves back a little bit. I was kind of like,
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
but I still think this was better than the one in the first episode, and it was still fun and mysterious. We're like, who is this guy? You know, she seems to be a little out of breath by it, but nothing she can't handle. You know, kind of similar
Right.
to the Qui-Gon scene because Merrick ends up jumping on the transport ship and leaving, and then his spinny helicopter lightsaber starts coming back, and she just like sidesteps it like
I
it ain't no thing.
loved that.
Yeah.
I love the one thing I love about Ahsoka's interpretation in these episodes is the fact that she seems extremely in tune with herself and the Force. Like, it's just become such a natural part of her. In fact, I think her interpretation in this is extremely samurai-like. It's very
Yeah,
controlled,
no, there was
very. She's
Kurosawa
very
type vibes
yeah,
throughout this scene.
Kurosawa for sure. But like, she's very controlled. She's very stoic, and I saw a lot of people talking about how, you know, when you've been through a lot, you tend to put more of a guard up, and I really get the sense that Ahsoka's guard is completely up, and while she's in control and she's really in touch with the Force around her, she's also a little bit blocked because she hasn't gotten to the point where she's Ahsoka the White yet. She's still Ahsoka the Gray, very much like Gandalf, and so she has that development that she needs to go through, and maybe part of that is letting that barrier down, maybe like that grief, that weight that she's carrying, knowing what happened to Anakin, despite knowing that, you know, his children are still alive and continuing to like do stuff in the galaxy. So I think the interpretation here is very interesting so far about where Ahsoka is at emotionally. And I will say I did like some scenes a little bit better more than others in regards to Rosario's performance of that. This
Agreed.
being one of them. I love how she just moved to the side.
Yeah, that was really cool. Okay, back on Lothal. Sabine returns home, takes out her Mandalorian armor, laying it out piece by piece. She dons the armor, nails it before laying out her helmet, cuts her hair very ceremoniously.
Very much. This is something that Kanan did in Star Wars Rebels as well.
Okay, so it's a very symbolic moment. Back on Corellia, the New Republic arrests Weaver and the rest of the workers. They Ahsoka and Hera part ways, and there's a call waiting for Ahsoka on her ship. It's Sabine in her armor telling Ahsoka she's now ready. The next scene is this scene-by-scene recreation from the Star Wars Rebels epilogue, which is pretty cool. Really well done if you compare the scenes side by side of how Sabine visits the mural of the Ghost crew and touches Ezra's face. Ahsoka arrives to pick her up, and they start going to the Deneb system. And as
Very
they leave
strange.
Lothal, Ahsoka calls Sabine her Padawan, which I didn't love that part. I loved the cinematography in the mural area. I thought was awesome. But then she's like, "You're my new Padawan," and I was just kind of like,
I feel
okay.
like they needed an extra conversation. I feel like
100% they did. Yeah, I was a little lost.
they jumped to that. In my opinion, they jumped to that a little too quickly. I feel like there was an opportunity for them to have a conversation when Sabine Hollow calls into Ahsoka, and she says, "I'm ready," and then you kind of open up the floor for more conversation. But I feel like Ahsoka was kind of like, "Okay, like we're doing
and there was
this
no
now."
moment from Sabine.
Yeah.
By the way, there was that other scene where it just shows her getting perfectly healed, like she pulls off the thing and her lightsaber wound is just fine. But there was no like moment where it's like Sabine's like, "I'm definitely ready now." Like there was none of that. And then the last scene we saw about the topic with Ahsoka and Hera, she's like, "No, I'll know when she's ready," but she still seems standoffish about it. So there was no moment for her either. So for them to just kind of pick up where they left off without more context was, I don't know, it just didn't flow.
Yeah,
the way
there
it should've.
wasn't a ton of resolution there. They definitely needed to have a conversation or like talking about what really needed to happen in my opinion is maybe kind of a humbling moment for Sabine realizing, "Oh, I'm not ready for this. I got my ass kicked." Like maybe having Ahsoka say something like, "Hey, I don't think you're ready for this. I don't think it's good to move on." Sabine's like, "No, I am ready." Maybe Sabine then gets her ass kicked and she comes back to Ahsoka and she's like, "You're right, I'm not." And maybe then you have a little bit of a moment of reconciliation. Now, that could still happen. They could still have a conversation in the third episode and the fourth episode, but I really feel like they missed an opportunity here to kind of bring it full circle because it just feel like Ahsoka changed her mind really quick.
Yeah. She was like instant.
Yeah. So I would have probably added a little bit more depth there if that was me.
So we go to Denab, this massive structure. I think it's a Purgil capturing machine. Looking kind of like the hyperspace rings that Obi-Wan uses to fly his starship.
That's what
into
I thought
space.
it was.
It's the Eye of Sion, the ship Morgan will use to find Thrawn. And Balin is troubled by Ahsoka's arrival. He says, interesting scene here, Ahsoka's coming and it'll be sad for them to kill her as she's one of the last remaining Jedi. And the episode ends there.
Morgan's response was interesting to that. She goes sentimental and he goes, "Truth."
Yeah. He's a very intriguing character, and I'm very bummed that he will no longer be with us after this. So it makes the performance much more impactful, I think. But but he's the most intriguing part of the show, I think, so far. Those two.
Yeah, especially because Balin seems a little bit more complicated. Like he's
Yeah.
not entirely Sith, and neither is
No.
Shin. Like they're
No,
not
they're
entirely
their own
Sith, but
thing.
yeah, there's something completely new in their own category. But I loved how they added that line. Like he really seemed remorseful at the fact that Ahsoka might have to die. And she's like, well, we can't really afford that. And he's like, I know. And then I feel like it's going to get to this point where when they inevitably have the conversation about Anakin Skywalker, there's going to be a lot of tension that comes out of that convo for both of them. Because he says in the trailer, everyone in the Order knew Anakin. He was like a legend. And she's like, I'm not here to talk about this. Like,
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of the guy from Fallen Order, the first one, Terran something,
why can't I think of who you're talking about?
Malicos, maybe that's his name, Terran.
Oh, right. The guy on Dathomir.
He kind of reminds me of that guy, you know. And I feel like they may have been able to recycle that character or use him in some capacity. I mean,
Interesting.
they couldn't have because of the timelines, but he kind of reminds me of him in that regard, where he was part of the Jedi Order, and then he kind of goes into madness on Dathomir with like the magic and stuff.
Interesting. Dude, wouldn't Balin technically be Anakin's age?
Maybe a little, yeah, maybe a little younger, but yeah.
Yeah, didn't Anakin die like when he was like in his 40s?
No, 50s, I think. Or maybe it was his
50s?
40s. I don't
Maybe
know.
it was
He
his
looked old,
40s.
dude. He
No,
looked
yeah,
really
look, he was a little potato underneath a mask. He was a rotted potato underneath a mask. But I think Balin's around Anakin's age, so they were probably both in their 20s. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where they, like, the kind of context he gives. So I will watch his character development with great interest. I think he's one of the strong suits of the show. So let's give some final thoughts here. Like, overall, what do you think of both of these?
I think it is a very solid start to the show. I think there's an incredible amount of potential. There were some things that were off-putting to me, like some dialogue, some of the performances. Again, I'm not completely sold on Hera. She's probably the biggest one for me, and that bothers me a little bit because I love her character so much in Rebels. Like, she's an excellent, motherly, kind, maternal figure in Rebels, and I just don't want to lose that. And I felt like the interpretation for Mary Winstead was not totally there, although it could get there. I am anxious to see how Ahsoka's character develops. I did feel like they focused maybe a little bit too much on Sabine in some scenes where I really, really want to see Ahsoka's development. After watching these first two episodes, I can safely say that the show feels a little bit more like Rebels Season 5 as opposed to Ahsoka. You know, it feels like a direct continuation of Rebels, maybe not Ahsoka's story necessarily, which has me a little concerned, so I hope we don't lose that entirely. But I do think that the show set the foundation for the series really, really well, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm a little anxious about some things, but again, it's super early to tell, but I think I'll have a pretty good feel about the show after episode 4,
Yeah.
I'd say.
You seem excited about it, which is good.
Yeah, I think...
What is... Go ahead.
I think, honestly, like, for the most part, I feel really good about it. I think it really feels like the show has a sense of direction, and I can't honestly say that the last few shows have felt like that. It feels like there is a plan to this show.
Yeah.
That they do have a certain outcome, and I think that, you know, like, Balin and Shin were really strong setups. Morgan Elsbeth was a really strong setup. I really enjoyed Ahsoka's introduction. I think that it's set up to succeed. I'm anxious to, like, get into, like, a rhythm with the show. It's like, okay, we have the setup now. Let's get into the rhythm. I really want to start.
Yeah, and I still I agree.
I'm immersing myself into it.
What rating would you give it?
What rating? Both of them together or as individual episodes?
You can do individual. Yeah, you can do individual.
I would say the first episode is definitely stronger than the second one. I think it was just a little bit tighter, and I enjoyed it a lot more. So I would probably have to say that one's maybe like an 8 or an 8.5. And then I'd have to say the second one's probably like a 7.8, which is still really high, I think.
Yeah, those are really high ratings. That's a really strong start. And I, from my side, I agree with you on almost everything you said. So, like, overall with both of them, I think the first episode's better, and I think that's because Filoni directed it. I think that made a huge difference. The musical cues, the pacing, the transitions, the tone, the the direction, like the true direction of it, I think was much more structured. It set things up very nicely. It felt more Star Warsy, I think, than the second one, which is a term we use a lot on this show. I think the practical effects were huge strong suit. The set design, production value, really, really good. The music's some of the best we've heard in any Star Wars show. Like Mando's is great, but this is like more original Star Wars-esque. Like they did the original stuff for Mando. This is like more of a continuation of that original universe, which I think is awesome. So Kevin Kiner, amazing, great job. Like all of that stuff is the best Star Warsiness of any recent shows. I think it's even the music's definitely better than Kenobi. I thought. The pacing of this was really good. I agree with you. I think the dialogue was a little choppy in some areas. Some of the Hera stuff was a little choppy. Some of the scenes dragged on a little bit. I think, which is fine. It's a little slow at times. Not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker for me.
It could have just been tightened a little.
Yeah, and then not sure how I feel about Rosario in some scenes yet. I still think she's a huge improvement from what we've seen before. But I'm not 100% there. But I still think she did a massive improvement. I only think it's going to get better as we go on. So, again, not a huge ding there. Fight choreography, I think, needs a little bit of work. Those action scenes could have been way better. Like, they were still good, but I just think there's room to grow. And we are spoiled by prequel lightsaber fights. And so, like, I always have that in my mind. I can't not compare it to that. And also video games, like Fallen Order and stuff, the fight choreography and all those is just so well done. And it's just it feels a little telegraphed to me in some circumstances. Like it feels like someone kind of did like a little cosplay lightsaber fight in their backyard at some points.
Sure.
And I think that was a criticism from many people. So I don't think I'm out of depth there. I think a lot of other people kind of said something similarly. The thumbnail for episode 2, like showing Sabine, was like, what are we doing? Like I hated that transition. Like I think that was a good way to end the first one, but to have her come back so quickly afterwards just cheapened it. Like it's just not good storytelling in my opinion. You got to make that more impactful. You got to tie up the Ahsoka Sabine relationship more. You also got to let the show stand on its own and not rely too much on the Filoni universe that they've built. You have to make it so that everyone can watch the show and know what's going on and get sucked in.
I do feel like they relied a little heavily on Rebels.
They did. And
just based on other people's reactions that I've seen, that I know who watched it, I was like, oof, yeah, you're really not. Because for the average Rebels fan, this is probably candy. There's so many things that I caught in there where I was like, oh my gosh, that's that character's name. That's that character's name. Oh my gosh, I can't believe like they did that. And they tied in Jaikel and then Ryder Rosati and all these things. Like, I get that because I've been committed over the years and I'm going to be rewarded for that commitment. However, I don't think it's good storytelling if a newcomer can't just come in and enjoy the thing on its own.
Agreed. Now, to my rating, I would say I agree with you. I think this first episode was better. I think Filoni did a better job directing, just honestly. I give it like an 8. I agree with you. I think it's about an 8, 7, 9, 8-ish, which is really strong. So I think it was a really good start off for this show. Like also compared to other TV shows, I think, with a sci-fi show like this, like a Star Wars fantasy type show, pretty good. That opening scene and the introduction of these characters, the mystique behind it was really good. So I'd give it a strong rating. I'd say the second one I didn't enjoy as much. Especially from the not having as much context from Rebels part of thing, especially with there could have been more explanation with Thrawn and with Ezra and with Sabine and Ahsoka and all that stuff. So I'd give it a lower one. It's still high. I'd give it like a 7.3 though, 7.4 maybe, which is still pretty good.
That's still pretty high, yeah.
But I'd say it's the appropriate amount underneath the first one, which I thought was really good. Overall though, as both these episodes stand, really good, and I'm excited about the next couple weeks. I'm excited to watch them, truly okay, what happens next week? I'm excited to watch it, which is a good sign. I can't necessarily say that was the case for Mando this year because it kind of fell flat. I don't think this fell flat at all. I think it started off very strong, and I hope they can continue that momentum for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely an intrigue. Like, I'm anxious to get to Tuesday. I'm also just really happy about the release time now. It's like, okay, it's on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. for me. Yeah. That's fantastic. I can watch it and still get to bed at a reasonable hour, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I think this show is really going to be a slow burn. I really do. I think it's gonna, and I mean that in like a good way. I think Dave Filoni's super notorious for this slow burn. Like, it's gonna take some time to build the momentum, and I think that these first 2 episodes are an example of that, but I think it's really going to come together in the end and be like, oh, that's what you were doing.
Yeah.
throughout
And they had
the
everything they
season.
needed. They had action, they had character development, they had good dialogue, like moments of like explaining stuff. They just need to keep doing that, I think. Like, so all my criticisms, guys, if people hate when I criticize these shows, take them with a grain of salt. I'm just trying to be honest here. I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
just
all
going to
you
sit here.
should do.
I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's the best show ever made. Like, I'm going to be honest. And honestly, I think it's good. Like, I think we're in good shape. And I just hope I hope they continue it. And I hope they don't take any shortcuts or any
Sure.
cheap moves. And I don't think they will. I hope it will be a slow burn. I hope they take time to develop the characters more and explain things and wrap everything up together. So even my complaint about not knowing the Rebel stuff, they might explain that in the next couple episodes, which great. I still think you
Yeah,
need
they
to
could.
get most of that out of the way in the first 2 episodes just to get it done so that people know if they haven't seen it before. But overall, I feel hopeful about it. I think it's great. So I'm happy with it.
Great. Yep, I think we're in a good place. Do we have time for listener questions?
How many do we have? A lot.
Wow, we have a few questions on the community page and then one via email. Do you have the community page pulled up? I can just read the email real quick.
Yeah, you want to read the email?
Yeah, so we have an email from Damien, and Damien's question is, my question for the Ahsoka show is, are we going to see Agent Kallus and Zeb? I'm asking this because in the finale of Star Wars Rebels Season 4, it was mentioned that Agent Kallus went back with Zeb to his home planet of Lyrasan. Are we going to see both of these characters with the Ghost crew? And then the paragraph goes on, but just in some, I think Zeb was a part of the original Ghost crew. If anything, I think he'd cameo, but I cannot see him having a big part in this show. Unless, like, they all came together and had to fight Thrawn's forces at the end. That's literally the only scenario where I could actually see Zeb coming back and then Agent Kallus. Respectfully, I don't think that they're going to come in and have like this big part, but I could definitely see it like being a cameo or through like a hologram or maybe at the final battle at the end. But I think for the most part, those characters are going to be pushed to the side since I think they're really trying to hone in on the Sabine and Ahsoka relationship and finding Ezra.
Yeah.
I think they'd cameo, but I don't know if they necessarily have like a big part.
The other thing to consider for this is it's expensive to make that character in live action.
Oh my gosh!
The motion
Yeah,
capture. So they
you
just might not have the
see?
budget for it. So I don't see him being a large recurring part in this, honestly.
Although you can tell that a lot of the budget went to this show. I think maybe where they blew the budget the most is probably Ahsoka and then Andor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can see they did a really good job with production thus far, but you just got to be careful because if you force stuff and you don't do it correct, because you're cutting corners, or you don't have the budget for it, it's like it cheapens the overall show. So
Yeah, I don't know if Zeb and Kallus really even have a place here. You know, it's not focused in on them, and that's a really good point to bring up in the budget. And also, the Damien says, "Keep up the great work." Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Damien. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you. Some stuff from the community page you guys wrote. Stephen Cuffey wrote, "It's incredibly amazing, and what I expected. I loved it. Looking forward to episode 3." Giovanni wrote, "Really enjoyed it. Had missed Rebels, and this really brought it back. I hope you guys do a live reaction to them." I was hoping to see you guys do a live reaction to them. Oh,
Maybe we can do that.
maybe we can do one of those. Yeah, we can. Maybe next week we can do that because we'll be on the same. This one was tough because it was the different time zones and it was 2
really
episodes.
long.
It was really long. So maybe we'll do that next week if we haven't had the baby by then.
Yeah. It's a little tricky to do that just because we don't also have a timer. Maybe that's something that I need to research into because we can't put the episode up because of copyright issues. So
Yeah, but
we'll
you
work
know what
on
we
that.
can we can do a timer. We can do one. We can do. I could actually do that with OBS. You can put a timer on OBS and just stream the camera from OBS to have a timer.
Oh,
We
that'd
both
be
click
great.
play at the same time.
That'd be great.
So that way
Let's
people
look
can
into
tune
that.
in. They can tune in and watch with us. So yeah, actually, let's plan on that. We'll talk through it and then we'll make a post on the community page, maybe for people to tune in and do a live reaction.
Okay.
CS Orange wrote, "Unbelievably good. Everything I had hoped for, if not more. People criticized Andor's 2-episode premiere. I highly doubt there will be complaints about Ahsoka's 2-episode premiere. Wasn't Andor 3 episodes?
I thought it was 3. Yeah. I don't know though. I really don't remember, dude. I haven't watched Andor since we watched it the first time.
Yeah, me neither.
We're gonna get flack for that for sure.
Did you want to read one?
Oh, yeah, sure. Pinky Davis 4223 says it was awesome. Was not expecting Morgan to be from the Witches. Are you kidding me? The show is going places we did not expect. It's going to be epic. I think that everybody definitely suspected Morgan was going to be like a descendant of the Night Sisters, but I think it was cool to see them bring that to fruition because the Night Sisters are such a cool concept.
Yeah, they are. I agree with that totally.
If the show keeps going, sorry, this is Timothy Whitfield, 8785. If the show keeps going like episodes 1 and 2, it will be my new favorite Star Wars series. Not that I hate any of them, lol.
Fair.
Then we have Jibe7796 says, I was extremely satisfied. Patrick Gill says, it was amazing. Keith Farrell said, it felt like live action Rebels. I loved it. So the reception is really positive.
Yeah,
And
it
I
also
think like
debuted at
rightfully
like an
so.
84% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now it's at like 86 or something. So pretty
Audience
positive. I
rating?
mean, I think that's the tomato meter, the regular one. But
Oh.
either way, if you look at those, there are some mixed reviews, and I mean, a lot of the critiques of stuff we've already kind of talked about. But I don't think I don't think it's anything that's gonna like make or break the show 100%,
Yeah, I agree.
unless there's some stuff down the line that they stay consistent with, like
Yeah,
choppy dialogue or some moments that just aren't
yeah,
fully
the
there.
pre-existing problems would definitely still have to be consistent throughout the show.
Jurassic Jam wrote,
the other-
loving this so far. I especially like the Dark Souls looking Marok. Totally, he looks badass. I feel great things coming for the show. Totally agree with you. I think there's a lot to be seen and wanted from this show, and there's a lot of creativity, and it really stays true to the Star Wars vibe, which was like creative, new, fresh, fun, interesting content.
Dude,
Jonas
did you
the
see
Dad
the?
wrote, go ahead.
Sorry, did you see the theory on Merrick potentially being Starkiller from The Force
I
Unleashed?
did.
What do
I
you
did
think?
see that. Well, Sam Witwer is in the credits of the show, so it wouldn't be crazy if that happened, right? I don't know that it would be the best decision, but I also never played Star Wars Force Unleashed all the way through. From my understanding, he's just way too powerful, like to keep that character from that game, like as is.
Well,
and
what
put
if it
into
was
Star
a?
Wars today and make it canon? But if you took a version of him and put him in the show, I think that'd be cool. Or maybe they're just throwing a bone to Sam Witwer and be like, "Look, you've been such a big part of Star Wars. Here's a cool part for you." Maybe he's someone totally new. I don't know.
Dude, if it was somebody totally new and he took off the mask and it's Sam Witwer, I think I would freak out. I think that would be a really, really cool move.
Yeah,
Just
I
because
agree.
it's a great callback to Starkiller. You don't have to make him Starkiller, but you could. I mean, like, isn't Starkiller's what is it? Galen Merrick? I think his last name like is
Yeah,
Merrick
it's the
or
same.
Mark or something like that.
Merrick, yeah.
And that is so Dave Filoni. Like Dave Filoni does not do these things unintentionally. He's extremely intentional. He's pulled in so much from Legends already, especially that I could see him doing this. But I would just think, what a treat for Sam Witwer because he's been a guy who's been there from the beginning. And he did a recent interview where he explicitly talked about Dave Filoni discussing bringing Starkiller into live action.
Well,
So
that would be a cool move. I wouldn't put it past Filoni. I just think you'd have to make some adjustments to the character, from what I understand from him. I don't know him great, but that would be cool. And also, I think Filoni would like to throw Sam Witwer a bit of a bone because he's been so involved in so much of Star Wars.
that would be
voice acting
so
wise.
cool.
Jonas the Dad wrote, "It can never be as it was animated for a live action adaptation. I found it really good." I think that's a good way of putting it. You can't animation. The reason why they do a lot of these shows animation is budget. You can't do some of the stuff in live action that you can do in animation.
Yeah.
But as far as it goes, in terms of how they've done it so far, pretty darn good.
Yeah.
As hard as that is to follow up some of the animated stuff you got to do, I think pretty strong. So, look, guys, great thoughts. We love them. If you guys want to have your thoughts read out on the show, email us. It's another Star Wars podcast at gmail.com, right?
Another Star Wars pod.
Another Star Wars pod at gmail.com. Email us there or right on our community page. Or comment on this video and like and subscribe so that you never miss out on an episode. Now, quick update from us. I might be having a baby soon, so it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it might not be for another 2 or 3 weeks. The due date's the 15th. I think the baby's gonna be here sooner, so I'm guessing before the 10th of September. So that might screw with me being able to react and do some of these breakdowns for everyone watching and curious. Some of you might be happy. They might be, thank God Matt's not going to be on the show to nitpick
No.
stupid
How am I
details.
going to have conversations?
But Melissa will still be here. You can hold down the ship and you can do a great job. I'm still going to try to join if I'm able to, and things are going well with the baby, and I'm still going to try to. And then I'm still going to watch the show too. So like that's definitely going to happen. I just might not be able to do, reaction videos. So we'll see. But that's just an update from my end. The baby could come any day now. We actually had to cancel our plans to Joshua Tree today because we're so close to the finish line here, and we just don't want to risk being far away from home. So that's an update from my end. But we will still be putting out content nonetheless, and I'll still be popping my head in here and there, even when the baby is arrived. So,
Yeah.
exciting times.
Yeah, it'll still be good, guys. I'll be around. I'll be holding down the fort like Matt says, but he's going to be a dad. So
Yep,
that's
girl
very
dad.
exciting, and that always takes precedence. So we'll have to see how it goes, but I will keep you guys periodically updated, and Matt will be popping in here and there. But until then, we appreciate your comments and your questions about Ahsoka. I honestly think it can only get better from here. I think as far as a live action sequel to an animated series, I think we're off to a strong start. I'm pretty anxious to see where it goes, but I think we have a very solid foundation for the rest of the series.
And if you guys want to tune in to all of the new content Melissa will be putting out, including chock full of surprises and action and fun commentary of Melissa's reaction videos, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends. We're at almost 5,000 subscribers now. So, guys, thanks for joining us on this journey. Pretty crazy. And, hopefully I'll be around in the next few weeks.
We'll
see
find
how that
out.
goes. Yeah, we'll find out. But, yeah, until then, guys, let us know what you thought of this episode below. Talk about the highlights you liked and what you didn't like. Are we on the money? Are we overanalyzing it too much? Do you like the format of the show, scene by scene? I don't know. Let us know. We listen. We read comments. We listen to feedback. That's the most fun part of the show is engaging. So let us know what you guys think. And we'll see you next time.
See you guys later.
See you. Bye.